I rise today in support of my bill, H.R. 8446, the Critical Mineral Consistency Act. This bill, which passed with bipartisan support through the House Natural Resources Committee and was recently introduced in the Senate with also bipartisan co-leads, would require the U.S. Geological Survey to incorporate critical materials identified by the Department of Energy into the USGS critical minerals list. Despite Arizona being a leader in copper production, dozens of potential copper mines in America remain untapped due to the burdensome regulations by the federal government, handicapping our own domestic mineral production and relying on imports from foreign countries. Not only harms our national security and economy, but it also hurts the environment, because we know when we mine in America, we do it safer and we do it cleaner than just about anywhere else in the world.
I think this is a really important debate for the American people to hear. I want to first address the comments that were made about these companies who are seeking to get access to public lands for copper and other minerals as being confused. Let's talk about the specific corporations that have been lobbying for this bill and the variations of this bill for years. Freeport, which is one of the largest copper mining companies in the United States, is worth $61 billion. Rio Tinto, an international conglomerate, the very one that is held by Chinese government holdings, is worth $159 billion. I asked my friends across the aisle, do you really believe that a multinational corporation that's worth $159 billion in multiple countries and continents is confused about permitting? I don't think so. $159 billion is 18 times the annual budget of the state of Arizona. Come on, guys. We're not fools. These companies have spent decades lobbying to open public lands, and specifically the sites that they're looking to mine on in Arizona. And in fact, it's why places like Oak Flat were set aside, because they are cultural sacred lands of tribes. And the copper industry 100 years ago had tried to mine on those lands. But we recognized as a nation that we don't want to mine on every single inch of American lands, because there are places where it is not suitable. It is not suitable for cultural reasons. It's not suitable for environmental reasons. It's not suitable because we don't want to look at a giant hole miles across in our backyards. Now, we need mining. We need minerals. But let's be clear. These companies are not confused. They spend millions of dollars every year lobbying the United States Congress and giving campaign donations to our friends who are running for Congress. This is not confusion. This is influence. So let's be very clear about what we're talking about. Now, I want to also address the claim that this is not about copper. Well, last night I went on to congress.gov, the American people can go do this, and there are like 6 different variations of this same bill. Some of them actually specifically name copper, and some do not. Guess what? It's the same sponsors, literally the same sponsors of this bill. So I can appreciate, and I always try to take my friends at face value. Okay, you're saying this has nothing to do with copper, but I encourage the American people to actually go do their own search, because this same bill has many iterations. Now, let's talk a little bit about the statutory and the cost considerations of this bill. Again, we heard the claim this is just about streamlining definitions, no big deal, but let me repeat. The USGS list not only confers the benefit of billions of dollars in potential tax subsidies and grants under many different federal programs, which the Department of Energy list does not, but it will permit actual streamlining and reduction of timelines, public review, and judicial review of mining operations, which effectively means for all of you out there who are listening, you don't get a say if this multinational corporation, which the Chinese government partially holds, gets to put a mine in your backyard. My friends across the aisle are always asking us to have common sense. Does this make common sense to you out there? Of course not. The public has a right to comment. The public has a right to be participants in decisions that the federal government makes on our public lands, and tribes have a fundamental right under the Constitution, treaty, and trust responsibility to help inform and decide whether or not we mine on tribal lands or lands that are important to our tribes. And the public has a right to say we don't want this because it's going to impact our future livelihoods. So for our friends to claim that, oh, this is just a simple definitional change in streamlining is really about taking away fundamental rights. Now, I think it's instructive. We had a lot of conversation before the election about Project 2025, and our friends across the aisle kept trying to distance themselves from it and say, oh, we're not actually planning to do that. But we printed out some of Project 2025 today, and I want to point you all to some of the choice sections on page 376. They want to pursue critical minerals. Oh, yeah, that's right. And on page 537, there's a whole section in Project 2025 about opening tribal lands to critical minerals mining. Does that sound familiar? Ironically, also on page 725 of Project 2025, there's an extensive discussion about how the Chinese government is plundering mines and critical minerals here in the United States. So it sure does make you wonder why my friends are pushing this in the final hours of this Congress as we're headed towards the closure of this Congress. And with that, I reserve.